Thank you so much. Yes, so I'm Lauren Windle. I'm the host of Third World Dates, which is I think I claim this, the UK's only Christian dating show. If you know of another one, then I apologize. But I believe that to be true. And we are actually still recruiting for the next season. So if anyone wants to come down to London, we've had 3 marriages. And in Liverpool, this will mean a lot to you guys. That's exactly the same number as Cilla Black had through the whole run of Blind Date. So I'm not saying I'm the Christian Cilla Black, but if you were to say it, I wouldn't contradict you. So I do that, but I also wrote this book, Notes on Love, Being Single and Dating in a Marriage-Obsessed Church, where I spoke to lots of different people about their experiences of dating and being single in the church. I have actually got this copy to give away, if anyone would like it. Yeah, that's exactly what happened at the last 2 services. So Liverpool hates free things, is what I'm hearing here. Last time, people came up to me at the end of the service to grab it off me, but I'm shooting off straight away to get a train down to London. So I'm going to just take this back with me. Or maybe I'll just leave it on the stage and someone can discreetly just come and take it, okay? No judgment. It's not like it's like how to recover from my porn addiction. It's like... It's a legit book. You can read this on the bus, guys. It's fine. It's not embarrassing. You're fine. Anyway, enough of that. Let's read from the Bible. Just regroup for a second. Okay. I'm going to read from one of Paul's letters to the Corinthians, where he's writing to the church in Corinth, and he's just giving them a bit of life advice about how they're gonna get on in their faith and in their lives. And this is 1 Corinthians 7:32 to 35. I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife, and his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. I'm saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord. Amen. So, being single and dating in the church, right? As it says in that passage, and as it says in many other places in the Bible, right? Particularly, even earlier in that same chapter, Paul says again, it is good to remain single. It is biblical, and it is biblically recognized that being single is not only legitimate, but fruitful and an incredible state, right, for you to be in. But for some reason, at some point in church culture, we've managed to get that a little bit skewed. And the church has kind of given people the impression that to get married is to level up, right? That is an upgrade. That means that you are desirable. That means that you are attractive. That actually everybody is working towards marriage as the next stage in their life development. So, you start off as a student or whatever, and then you have your single time, and then you're married, and then you're a parent, and then you're retired, and that's it. That is the life trajectory. But what I'm saying is that is not what we see modeled in the Bible. We see people doing things well out of order, at times in their lives when you wouldn't expect them to at all. And we see people, some of the most incredible people in the Bible, who never married at all. For example, Paul, who wrote that letter, John the Baptist, Jesus, right? These are people who never got married. So I would be surprised if you've ever actually heard someone stand at the front of a church on the stage and say, by the way, guys, marriage is better than being single. But there are these low-key ways that it's kind of slipped into our culture and kind of given people the impression that that is the case, right? So how have we seen that? So number one, right, if you worship in any kind of UK church, I would suggest that 90% of the people who you've seen speaking on stage are probably married. Most people in senior leadership in your church will be married. I did check. There are 2 people on staff here who are not married, which is great. So yes, there he is. Do you want to flag that up so Yeah, he is single, in the flannel. Go and say hi, ladies. I believe he's 23, and he's been very friendly to me, so far would recommend 24. Anyway, it's not an auction. But it's true to say that the most of the representation that you've seen from senior leadership in your church is married, right? And then you've got events that are geared towards, obviously, kids, and then you get into your student and your young adults. And then there's kind of no ministry designated for you unless you get married, when marriage courses and marriage support and marriage prep all kind of kick off. And if you're a person who has aged out of the young people stuff, you may find yourself in a position where there's nothing designed specifically to serve you in the church. The church calendar is completely sort of run around the school calendar. And if you're not in a sort of family and you don't have your own kids, that's not really relevant to you. I turn up to church in August. Jesus is here, so where's the rest of the worship band, is my question. Why are we on a skeleton service just because it's summer holidays? I don't travel in August. It's too expensive, quite frankly, and there's too many kids around. I prefer to go on holiday in September. When I was interviewing people for this book, I spoke to one woman whose church ran a games night, and she told me, she was single, and she was in her 50s, and she told me that she wasn't invited because all of the games are done in pairs, and as an unmarried woman, they didn't extend the invite to her because she didn't have a sort of partner to play the games with. And in a survey done by Single Friendly Church in 2012, one woman told this story of how she got a boyfriend. She'd been in her church for years. She got a boyfriend, really exciting. Lots of people in the church couldn't wait to meet him, and she got loads of invites over, her and her new fella to dinner. And she was like, how much more did I need those invitations when I was a single person, before I had a boyfriend, There was a survey of American churches, so it is, it's a different culture, different sort of climate, but a survey of American churches that found that 50% would not allow an unmarried person to lead one of their midweek small groups or life groups, which, just to clarify, means that Jesus did not reach the qualification threshold for leadership in that church. So, wild. What we do when we say stuff like that is we infer that marriage equals qualification, right? And actually, look, and I didn't start with this, but I usually do, and I will say it now. I am not at all anti-marriage. I think marriage is phenomenal. It's an amazing covenant, and when two people together can do more for their kingdom than they can apart, and they can support each other and love each other and show up and pray together, oh my gosh, that is beautiful. It is to be championed and celebrated. We do the dating show in order to hopefully get people who want to be married. So it's phenomenal, right? But it is not a qualification for leadership. It is a qualification for marriage, right? All that means is that one person wanted to spend a lot of time with you. That's it. And if I'm being honest, and if you were too, I know a lot of rubbish married people who definitely should not be leading anything. And then I also know single people who are not gifted for leadership. And that is totally fine. But I also know that there are single and married people who are phenomenal when it comes to pastoring people and discipling people. And if we exclude some of them because of their relationship status, we are cutting off something potentially amazing for our church, for our congregations, for our communities, by expecting people, to be married. And the same goes for church planting. Often we'll see couples coming on the stage, and it's like, oh, this guy's going off to plant, and here's his wife, Susie, and we're like, yay, John and Susie. And you just don't really see, people who are unmarried doing that. And I had a friend who I spoke to, and she was like, I really feel called to church planting, and if I get married, I'll look into it. And I'm like, whoa, why? Why would you wait if you feel like God has really put that on your heart? And I do think that that is changing, particularly like, I think that, Focus is obviously designed to like send out church plants, and you guys have benefited from the amazing planting initiatives there. And I have seen in more recent years, in fairness, groups of people or 2 or 3 people who are single, but in community with each other going off to do that. So we're seeing it modeled, and we can see this stuff changing, which is phenomenal. And then there's the celebrations, like you can do your GCSEs, your A-levels, or your degree or whatever, and people might celebrate, like when you graduate. But then if you're a person who's committed to staying single, that might be the last sort of big celebration that you have. Because other than that, when do we really go wild? It's for engagements, it's for weddings, it's anniversaries, it's pregnancies and christenings and things. And those things are good, and we should really celebrate them. But also, for people who haven't yet and maybe aren't going to experience those things, why don't we break out the schlur for like a promotion, for moving house, for getting a dog, for paying off your mortgage, for any number of other amazing life milestones that have nothing to do with changing your relationship status. It's not the be-all and end-all. Ultimately, what we're doing when we get married is we're exchanging the perks and challenges of one state of being single for the perks and challenges of another state of marriage. It is not a progression in your life in that sense that takes you to a better place, takes you to a different place. And that is totally fine. But we need to stop acting like we solve singleness by getting people married. There are problems associated with being single around lifestyle and loneliness and connection that are fixed in many other ways than just kicking someone down the aisle, right? And the more that we get in that mindset, the more we see unhealthy dating, because everyone feels like they've just got to get it across the line, and they make decisions and they make compromises that are not healthy for them, and they rush things, and that is not what we want. And another way that we see that pressure coming on single people is from like comments that we can make in church that we like totally mean to be really encouraging, Like, I grew up in a church where, like, everyone's your auntie, and everyone knows your business, and everyone's coming over just to, like, get the tea and stuff like that, and that's fine. But I know for male friends, there's this sort of rhetoric that there's not as many single men in the church as there are single women, so lots of my male friends feel like there's a lot of pressure on them to, like, be asking people out and get out there, and have you asked her out? And she's great, and when was the last time you asked someone out? And, like they're not doing enough for the war effort if they're not out there dating, picking a wife, when actually there could be many reasons why someone has decided that they're not going to be doing that at the moment. And then there's stuff like, oh, when's it your turn? Oh, is it going to be your turn next? Like, yeah, I don't know, Janet. If I knew that, I'd be off with him now, wouldn't I? Are you really putting yourself out there? Are you on the apps? Have you been on the apps? Can I have a look? Can I see I could do some swiping for you. You should message him. Isn't he nice? Isn't he nice? Why haven't you said yes to him? And people kind of see it as this, like, fun, like, oh, yeah, let's get involved kind of thing. Like, and this is my least favorite one. You're just so great. Like, you're just so great. I just can't believe you're single. As if, like, greatness equals marriage. Like, you shouldn't be left behind here because all the good ones are already married and you're kind of like them, so you should be in that club. When really, no, like I said, there are rubbish married ones and rubbish single ones, and they're all just a melting pot, and it's not like the sort of cream of the crop have been sort of skimmed off. And they're married. That is just not the situation at all. And when we speak like that, like, you're so great, you should be married, we give the impression that there's something wrong with you if you're not. And that is absolutely not the case. And we need to be really careful about that. So, if somebody is single, the first question that they want to be asking in their life is not like, who am I going to date? When am I going to get married? How am I going to lock this in? It's, should I date? That is where we start. Should I date? Because for some people, right now, they shouldn't. They're not in the right place to date. They're still caught up on a previous relationship. Maybe they need to do a bit of emotional healing, a bit of growing in themselves. Maybe they haven't really got dating, a marriage, and a relationship and the theology around that quite right. Maybe it's become an idol in their lives. Maybe they need to reset that. Maybe actually they're going to do a bit of harm to themselves and the people around them if they launch themselves into dating in that way, right? And then for some people, actually, what looks like fullness of life, what looks like fruitfulness, what looks like undivided worship to God is staying single. And we've created this environment, both in the church and in culture, like where marriage and relationship and coupling up is equated with success. And that's just not right. There's no dating show where someone hands you 50 grand after 6 weeks and goes, well done for 6 weeks of healthy singleness, But it is as difficult and as important to achieve as healthy relationships. And we've really got that twisted. So when someone makes a decision that they are going to remain single, which the Bible says is a good thing, it is to be respected and admired and can create incredible kingdom opportunities, right? We need to make sure that that person isn't alone or lonely and isn't bereft of the connection that they need in their lives, right? Because actually, lots of people would stay away from that decision for fear of isolation. And as church family, we can do better than that. We can come around people better than that and make sure that they don't feel that way. So, first question is, should I date? But also, I would acknowledge that the majority of people who are single with the hope of a relationship in the future. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. That is a God-given desire, and it's amazing. When you meet someone and there's that excitement. But the thing with being single is that it can kind of oscillate between feeling kind of easy, like when your friends go off because they've got to relieve the babysitter, or when you've got like a married friend who's having like real marital problems and they're just not communicating well, and it's like so painful. In those moments, it can feel really easy to be unmarried and single. But then there are other times where actually, it feels really painful, where you've prayed about this for years and years and years, and you maybe see another engagement announcement on Instagram, and you're like, oh, God, why is this still not happening for me? Why am I still the one who's single? Why have you not heard this? There are times, like if you go on a group trip and you're the single one, so you're given like a small Z bed in the living room whilst the married couples all get their privacy because they're married, or when you're traveling on your own and it's late and your plane's delayed, and actually some things are just easier with another person there, I get that. It can be hard. There will be people in this room who feel wary, who feel disappointed, who don't know where God is in this anymore, who don't know how many more rejections they can take, don't understand why they're always someone's friend and not their love interest. They wonder if they're ugly. Maybe they're not clever enough. Maybe they're not funny enough. Could it be that they're too boring or too short or too nice? Maybe they're just fat. Maybe they don't fit into the typical Christian girl thing. Maybe they're too loud, too opinionated, too difficult to love, too much. Maybe they don't fit into the typical Christian guy thing. Maybe they don't play guitar and have floppy hair and approach girls. No offense, guys. Worship was great. And maybe they can't approach women and girls and talk to them in the same way, with that kind of easy freedom that they've seen other guys do, and they don't really know why. Maybe they feel like giving up hope. Maybe they know God is good, but they just don't feel it anymore. Maybe they feel unheard and unacknowledged and unanswered. There will be people in this room who maybe did meet someone, and they were like, oh my goodness, I'm so pleased this is finally happening. I stopped looking, and then there he or she was, just like Instagram always said. It's so good. This is why nothing ever worked before, because this is what God was like saving me for. Like, I finally had this prayer answered. This is amazing. And then maybe it came to nothing. And maybe they feel that disappointment of what they'd hoped for, of a life that they thought that they might be about to have, pulled away from them, of that intimacy, of the regular conversation with someone, gone, when you really started to invest in that person and open up to them and feel vulnerable. There'll be people here who've been dumped, friend-zoned, ghosted, disappointed over and over again. Often these situations are fine. It's just a shame, like you'd hoped for something, but the feelings weren't there or the situation wasn't right, and you've got to deal with the disappointment of that. But sometimes you've actually been really badly treated. You've not been shown the respect and the honor that you deserve as a person. And not only have you got to process the disappointment of something you hoped would be, you've now got some trauma to heal from that could take some time. And sometimes that's at the hands of someone who calls themselves a Christian, somebody who you trusted because you thought that they had a really live faith. And that's really painful. And I am so sorry if that's you, if you're exhausted and scared, and just the idea of going at this again is terrifying. Because, to be honest, if you want marriage, if you want a relationship, you have to take off your armor. It involves vulnerability. You can't do it guards up, protected. You have to continuously, sadly, put yourself in a place where you are vulnerable to pain. And that is really, really tough, particularly if it's something that you've been doing for a few years now and something you've been praying on for a really long time. Dating is a risk. It's a risk, and it involves pain. But I do believe that there are ways that we can protect ourselves a bit. Yes, we have to be vulnerable, but there are ways that we can do this that mean that we can try and minimize the pain a bit, and certainly minimize the pain that other people around us experience during this process. And the first thing and the most important thing before you, in fact, doesn't matter your relationship status. You could be single, you could be dating, you could be married, you could be anywhere. But the first thing is to know that your relationship status does not dictate the amount of love that you have access to, right? Because you are a person who will never be more loved than you are now. And you've never been more loved, and you will never be more loved in the future. You are saturated with love. There is no person on this earth, either your actual husband or wife, or your future husband or wife, or any friend or family member, who will be able to show up for you as consistently and patiently and lovingly as Jesus. And to expect another person to do that, to be looking around for someone to fill that gap, is always going to leave you feeling a bit empty and a bit disappointed, and put way too high expectations on the people around you. People let you down, even kind people, and that's okay. I let people down, you also let people down. Jesus never lets anyone down. He is never going anywhere. He assigns you the highest value. And if you recognize that, if you start every day from that place, if you start every conversation with your partner, every conversation with your first date, every conversation with whoever, knowing how extravagantly loved and valued you are far more likely to have healthy relationships and to treat those around you better, and also, kind of crucially, to walk away from something when it's not right, because you understand how you should be treated, and you measure how you should be treated based on how God and Jesus treats you, based on your value. Someone was saying to me, like, if you've been treated badly in relationships, say you've been treated like 20%, then someone can come along and treat you like 40%, and you'll be like, this is amazing, oh my gosh, this is the best relationship I've ever had. And you end up settling for really quite poor treatment, when actually, like, we need to be measuring our value against what Jesus says about us, and not about flawed dating relationships where people bring their own baggage in and they behave sometimes quite badly. And I think if you can get that right, then actually self-esteem starts to fall into place. The idea of your value starts to fall into place. You know, in Ephesians 2:10 it says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Jesus Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." We are God's handiwork. You don't need to change. You don't need to be thinner. You don't need to be funnier. You don't need bigger lips. You don't need bigger abs. Whatever it is, right? You are God's handiwork. He loves you exactly as you are. You do not need to fundamentally change things about yourself in order to be worthy of love. You are worthy of love exactly as you are, where you are, right? And we can go so far wrong when we keep striving to conform to other people's narratives of what is worthy of love. Next up, I think that there's, and I know that there's this sort of idea that there aren't many, or in some cases any, good single Christians around. People can kind of feel like they're at a dead end. There's no one for them to ask out. There's no one who's going to ask them out. And I would really challenge that narrative. And I know that we've got a bit of a skew in church. Often it doesn't really look like it here, but where we've got like more single women than single men, you know, in some churches and things. But I don't see anywhere in the Bible where God freaks out about the statistics. You know, like, we worship a God who sees like one packed lunch and it's like, yeah, 5,000 people are going to feast on that. You know, like, there's no restrictions, there's no numbers, you know. So we can't work from a scarcity mindset. I think if you feel like, oh, I've just got to date that person who's actually not treating me very well, but because I don't really have any other options, then you're going to end up in a potentially quite a negative situation. This is, for people who are single and dating, I think this is the most important, or no, the knowing God loves you thing is the most important. This is the second most important thing that I'm going to say, and it is a conversation I honestly have like once a day when we're filming the dating show, right? You do not have a type. Seriously, the number of people who've got like notes on their phone with like a 50-point checklist of what their partner is going to be like. Never leave me alone with those lists, because when you come back, I will have deleted like 95% of it and be like, that's your new list. You don't have a type. And we see, like, you know, all of these reality shows which are all about dating. They'll be like, oh, what's your type? And the person will be like, yeah, I just like brunettes with blue eyes. That's not a type. That is ridiculous. I honestly want to go into Love Island and tell them, like, what are you talking about? The physical attributes on somebody have nothing to do with how they're going to show up for you as a partner, of what their heart is like and what they're going to be like in a marriage and in a relationship. What your type is, or here's all of our new type, right? Faithful to you, faithful to God, interesting conversation, and someone you are physically attracted to. I'm not saying you have to take one for the team and date people you don't fancy. What I'm saying is you need to be open to finding attraction in places that you maybe didn't expect to. Because if you're walking around going, oh, I'm only attracted to this ethnicity, or this eye color, or this hair color, then I'll tell you what the aunties in the church I grew up with told me, and that is that you could be blocking your blessing. Okay? Because actually, look, I've got a biblical story that I think illustrates this. This is from 1 Samuel 16. So where we're at is that Saul is the king of Israel, and he's like messing it up, and they're not happy. But then they've got the prophet Samuel, and Samuel's like, speaks to God about it, and God's like, go to Jesse's house, Samuel, because we've got a next king lined up, and you'll meet him at Jesse's house. Jesse's got loads of sons, so go there, and you'll meet the next king of Israel. He's like, great. He rocks up. And when he gets there, he meets the oldest son, right? Jesse's oldest son. And this guy is like built like a tank. He is tall. He is ripped. He looks like a warrior. And kings in this day, right, they had to be like battlefield ready. They had to be intimidating. They had to be like warriors. And he's like, yes, Okay, we've got him. This is the new king. But what does God say? What does God say to Samuel? The Lord said to Samuel in verse 7, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. The people look at outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Imagine that you've set your dating app preference to 6 foot, and there's a 5'10" man out there who is a man after God's own heart, who would treat you phenomenally and be an amazing father to your children, amazing husband to you, but you've got this arbitrary idea about what the person you're going to date looks like, and you miss it. And I think that would be such a shame. And I've honed in on the height thing because I think it's become a real issue for women. But there are plenty of other things as well, there are men who've got certain ideas about, what a woman's shape should be like, or, and I've heard plenty of people say that they only date in certain ethnicities and stuff, like all of that stuff out the window. We're looking at people's hearts. We want to see what God sees. And we need to be really careful writing people off. I could go on. I've got lots of tips about how we can be more healthy in our dating. But there's some stuff that I think we can all do that I'd love to suggest to you guys. If your relationship status changes, and for lots of people that'll be that they get married, but also I've got some friends who have really sadly ended up getting divorced and had horrendous situations around that, and there are people who are widowed, and there are people who've had immense pain around the ending of a relationship. So no matter what direction we're talking about, be really careful not to ditch your friends, either when your relationship changes or when theirs does. Because, one of my divorced friends was invited to all of the couples' dinner parties when he was married, and then when that relationship ended, gone. And he's got enough pain to deal with the breakdown of his relationship, that now he's lost a whole load of friends as well. Just like many single people will journey with someone and then not see that person again the day after they get married. And they will feel like they've been dropped by, particularly women will feel like they've been dropped by a girlfriend as soon as they've gotten married. If we're going to do community well, we need diverse groups of friendships. We need married couples, friends with single people, friends with married couples. And we need to make sure that we're all mixing together. We don't want marriage to feel like some sort of club that you're in until you're not, because that's incredibly painful. And again, just reinforces this narrative that it's something that you get access to when you're, let's just all be friends with everyone. We don't ditch people, particularly when people are in places of pain. We lean into those relationships, and maybe those relationships have to change. But actually, that's okay. Relationship is not supposed to be easy. It's about building lasting connection. And the final thing, right, Psalm 68, verse 6. Father to the fatherless, defender of the widows, is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. God sets the lonely in families. And we can be so tense about the way that we offer hospitality. We can mix up hospitality and entertainment. We can think that to invite someone round, we've got to have cleaned the house and cooked various meals and, take their coat when they come in and put a Spotify playlist on. That's great, but that is entertainment. Hospitality is not inviting someone in so they can spectate in your beautiful home and your beautiful family. It's inviting them in so they feel a part of it. It's letting them put their own dish in the dishwasher. It's sending them up to read a story to the kids. It's telling them that there's a pasta bake from yesterday, but they can microwave some. It's making people really feel like a part of what you're doing at home. And single people need that. And if you're a single person, come alongside a family, because my goodness, could they do with another pair of adult hands? And if you're a family, open up your home, I'm not saying to everyone, but if you're not doing that with anyone, then I think that you're missing out on some vital connection, some vital community that benefits us in both ways. God sets the lonely in families. And my call to you guys is that this should be a church where if somebody is single, whether that is for the next 6 days, the next 6 months, or for the next 60 years, they can be single in this church community and never feel alone or isolated. They will always have connection, feel love, be seen, and be truly known. And that takes proactivity from all of us, regardless of our relationship status.